All right, everyone can hear me? We're good? Cool. I think we'll, oh, can I have the clicker here? I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming. Before we go into intros, I actually want to start off with a quiz. So this is a level from Candy Crush, free-to-play game, very successful. Does anyone know what level in Candy Crush this is? No one? Any guesses? Close. No, it's level 65. This is Candy Crush developed by King. And the reason I start by showing level 65 is this is a classic success story in analytics and game development. King invested in a data analytics team. They ran the analytics to figure out where are people dropping off. They saw there was a huge drop-off in level 65. They made it a little bit easier, and it was successful for them and for the players. So this is a quote from Andy Dunn. He was the head of data analytics when they did this investigation. And I like to start with this because of the last sentence here. It's important to keep a dialogue going with our gaming community. What data allows us to do is create that dialogue at a huge scale. And I like this because sometimes people can view data as opposed to creativity or a cold, inhuman factor in game development. But when used correctly, data and analytics actually expands our connection between the developers and the players. And that's what we want to talk with you about today. So I'm Ben. I'm a data engineering manager at Meta. I focus on creation tools in game development. I have 2 degrees, one in psychology, one in analytics.
Yep. And I'm Brad. I'm a data scientist at Meta. I focus on Horizon ecosystems, mobile, and content success.
And we're going to talk to you today about how we at Meta use analytics in our game development. And hopefully this results in all of you being able to take away some learning about how you can use analytics in the development of your own game. So we're going to split the talk today into 3 different buckets or 3 different levels. Level 1 is sort of the intro. This is how do we measure our top-line goals of our game? Are players coming back to our game? Do we have a good monetization model? Can we grow efficiently? Level 2, we're going to deep dive a little bit and talk about how we can fine-tune our game experience to achieve the right balance. And then finally, my colleague is going to talk about, in level 3, some innovative work we're doing on metrics to help us to detect aha moments in a game. These are the magical moments of a game where when a player experiences, they get it. Now, we're going to use Horizon as our case study. We both work on Horizon. That's what we're familiar with. And we work for Meta. So we're hoping that this talk is applicable to all types of game developers, but we'll probably have an outsized focus on things like UGC platforms, free-to-play games, games that are on platforms that have analytics available. Almost all the metrics we talk about today are already available for Horizon creators or coming very soon. And you might hear me use the word world instead of game or creator instead of developer. So let's jump right in. So we'll start with level 1. How do we measure the top-line goals of our game? So I'm going to talk about 3 goals. The first one is, have we achieved product market fit? Have we built a successful game? Now, there's a lot of ways to think about this. At Meta, we really care about, have we built a game that people are going to come back to? Then we'll talk about monetization. Do we have a profit model that can justify the project that we're doing? And finally, once we've nailed a retentive game, a game that monetizes well, can we grow efficiently when it's time to acquire more players? So we'll start with the first question. Do we have a game that players want to come back to? And there's a golden standard metric for this, which is retention. So I'm going to show you 2 flavors of retention here. Starting on the left, we have classic retention. This is what percentage of new players to your game are going to come back and keep playing at a later point. So on Meta, this is the formula we use. Let's say we have 20 new players on day 0 that are trying out the game. We're going to check back in with them 30 days later, and we're going to see what percentage of them have played the game in the last week. So in this example, we had 20. There's 8 who are still playing a week later, or 30 days later. That gives us 40% weekly active users at day 30. Now, there's a very similar metric called stickiness on the right. It's basically the same, except that we care about all types of users, right? So we're going to look at all the players on day X. Maybe they're new players, maybe they're existing players. And then we're going to go forward 30 days. What percentage of them have played in the last week? If you're a new game early in development, you probably care more about retention. You want to make sure as you get new players that you're really going to be a hit with them. If you're a more mature game, you might care more about stickiness. You don't want to alienate your existing player base, even if it means you'll do a little better with new users. OK, but both of these metrics actually have a huge problem, which is that they take 30 days for us to see the results, right? And that's just too long for most games, especially if you have live ops support, seasonal updates. You don't want to make an update to your world or game and then have to wait 30 days to see if retention went up or maybe even down. So the way that we solved this at Meta is we looked at all of our fast landing metrics, and we tried to see, do any of these have a correlation with retention? Right? Is there any signal we can get from these quick metrics that will tell us if a game is going to be retentive? And it turns out there is. So we ran this analysis, and we came up with this metric, sustained visit rate. So for a Horizon world, what percentage of the visitors stay longer than 5 minutes? And if you have a high sustained visit rate, you're probably going to have high retention. And now, of course, if you're on a different platform or different game, you might have different metrics, and you might want to run your own correlational analysis. Or Brad will talk about in level 3 a method you can use to figure out which metrics matter for your game. OK, let's talk about the second goal, revenue. Is it profitable? Do we have a good monetization model? Now, Horizon Worlds is a free-to-play game. So the first thing we're going to look at is, what is our in-world purchase funnel? Now, I'm mainly going to talk about sort of natural monetization. I hope everyone here got to see the monetization talk earlier today. We have a big creator fund that's sort of on top of all of this. So we look at the in-world purchase funnel. We see how many players visited your world is sort of the top of it. Maybe at the bottom, you have how many of them made a purchase. And that's the main metric we care about from this, which is our payer conversion rate. So let's say we had 22 players visited a world, 4 of them made a purchase. We have a payer conversion rate of 18%. Now, you can also, of course, do all types of analytics here. Why is there a big drop-off before add to cart? Maybe I need to make it easier to add items to the cart. But we would start with the payer conversion rate. Now, this doesn't tell us anything about revenue, actually. Right? This just tells us how many purchases were made, but we don't have a dollar amount. So I'm going to show you 2 revenue metrics side by side. So on the left, we have average revenue per user. This is pretty self-explanatory. We're going to take the total revenue we have in our world. We're going to divide it by the total number of players. This is great because you would use this as a rule of thumb for how much revenue am I going to gain if I gain 1,000 more players. We also have a similar metric on the right, average revenue per payer. This is the same calculation, but we're only looking at players who have made a purchase. Now, I like to look at all 3 of these metrics together, payer conversion rate, average revenue per user, and average revenue per payer. They're all sort of different dials that might wobble as you grow. If you add 1 million more users or players, you might have a lower payer conversion rate, but hopefully your average revenue per payer stays the same. Those are all things you want to track as you start to grow. OK, there's like a whole course you could do on monetization metrics. I'm not going to cover all that. I'm just going to focus on those basics that I already talked about. Here's some other ones we look at Meta, but we have to move on. OK, so let's say you have a retentive game. You have a great monetization model. Are we ready to grow efficiently? So there's a couple metrics we look at Meta. The first one is growth accounting metrics. So as we're growing, we want to take each player that we have and put them into a different bucket. Maybe a player is new to your game or new to your world. Maybe a player is retained. So they were new and they kept playing your game. That's great. Maybe they're churned. So they played your game and maybe they didn't like it, or for whatever reason they didn't come back. Or maybe they're resurrected, right? So they stopped playing your game, but they came back. Maybe their friend invited them, or there could be any number of reasons. These are called growth accounting because there's all types of formulas you can do, which are really cool. But honestly, just tracking the raw numbers of these buckets is really helpful as you start to grow. Now, how do we optimize our growth? We like to look at the top of funnel. So on Horizon Worlds, this is something, the visit through rate. So we look at, of all the players who saw our world, how many of them actually visited it? Different platforms might look at different things, right? If you have a game that you pay for, you would look at purchase rates or wish list rate. You might look at install rate on different platforms. But the idea is the same. Are we converting for the people who have seen and heard about our game? Are they actually trying it out? And we have some cool features here on Horizon Worlds. We're launching very shortly a tool that creators can A/B test different cover photos of their world to see which one performs better. If you're on a different platform, you might want to switch around your gameplay preview video. Those are all ways that you can drive this up. OK, again, there's more metrics you could talk about here. I already talked about install rates. I also put up here K-factor. It's a little more technical, but you can Google it. There's plenty of information out there. That's a way that you can measure virality. So if you have a viral game, according to the K-factor, you should expect that it will grow by itself, right? People are going to tell their friends about it, and it will just take off, which would be awesome, right? OK, before I show you that, there's one thing I haven't told you, which is how do you know if the value of your metric is good or not, right? Is 40% retention good? Is 66 cents average revenue per user good? And the answer is, I don't know, right? You might be on a different platform or have different goals or focus on different devices. One method that we do recommend you use is provided by most major platforms, including our VR store, including Horizon Worlds, and that's benchmarking. And basically, that compares your metrics to other sets of games that are successful on the platform. This picture is from our VR store. We're launching within the next month benchmarking on Horizon Worlds, where you can compare your retention against the top 100 worlds or other metrics. If you can hit that range of other games that are successful on the platform or even beat it, you're probably in a good shape to go to the next level. OK, so that's it for level 1. That's a quick intro of these 3 goals. Those are the metrics we talked about. That's sort of 101 analytics for game development. Now we're going to go into level 2. This is about fine-tuning your game and achieving the balance that you want as a developer. In contrast to level 1, where most developers care about the same metrics, level 2, most developers and games are going to have a unique set of metrics that they care about. So not every developer is going to care about the same metrics, but every developer should care about some metric in this stage. And it's going to differ by genre, right? So Candy Crush, which is a puzzle game, they probably care about round analytics or level analytics. How many people are making it to each level? How much time are they spending there? A game like Super Rumble, which is a PvP shooter in an arena, they might care more about weapons analytics or kill-death ratio to hit the balance that they want. And there's all types of metrics that you can look at here. These are just a few. All of these are available to creators on Horizon Worlds. I can't go through all of them, but I'll talk about 3 just so you get a sense of what this looks like. I'm going to talk about area analytics, round analytics, and weapons analytics. OK, let's start with area analytics. This is Bobber Bay. It's a Horizon world that's an island. Players can go fish. And there's not a linear path through this, right? You can go fish anywhere you want. You can ride the boat. You can go in the secret tunnel. You can go in the store. You can go to the lighthouse. We care a lot about knowing how players are interacting with each area of our world. So one really cool thing that we do is we can look at 3D heat maps of our world. So we use this internally. It's coming very soon to creators. This is the Bobber Bay world in gray. And then on top of it, we've superimposed a heat map, in this case, of the points where players leave the world. So we can see there's a big red spike right where you join the world. So some people join and leave right away. There's another spike at the respawn point when you fall off the boat. Maybe you get frustrated and you don't want to wait for the boat to come back, so you leave. There's also a cluster at the top where we have signage and updates. So those are all things you'd want to take into account as you're developing a world. And we have different heat maps. We have time spent, monetization location, where players report other players, things like that. A more traditional view to area analytics, which we also support, is to allow developers to label an area in their world, right? So this whole area is the lobby, and I want to see how many players enter the lobby. Or this whole area is the store, or the secret lounge, or whatever. So we ran something on Super Rumble early on when they were doing a beta test, and we found that only 60% of the players visited the abilities area. Now, abilities in Super Rumble, like Super Punch, Super Jump, these are a core part of the game experience, but 40% of the players weren't being able to change their ability. You can only change your ability in the abilities area. So we shared this with the studio. They saw this data, and they redesigned the lobby, added some signage, and we got that number to 10% instead of 40%. OK, let's move to round analytics. So I'm going to share 2 examples here. On the left, we have Kaiju. This is a Horizon world where one player is a monster, and they're trying to destroy the city. The other players are defenders, and they're trying to take down the monster. Now, we did some round analytics here. And during beta launch, we saw that, I'm going to have to read here. I didn't memorize all these numbers. 38% of the players did not even start a round, which is a pretty bad experience. Maybe that's because the median wait time to even start a round was around 30 seconds. And that's median. So there's players waiting even longer. And that's just too long, especially for mobile players. 42% of the rounds ended because the monster left. And then finally, of the completed rounds, it was unbalanced. Only 7% of the time, the defending team, which has more players on it, won the round. So the studio saw this data. They made the updates. It's much more balanced now. You should go check it out. It's really fun. Another example is Spy School. This was a pretty early world that we invested in at Meta. It's a platformer. You're racing against other players on an obstacle course. And you're trying to complete a round. A round is 5 stages, so there's sort of a hierarchy. And so we found 20% of world visitors never started a round. Only 32% of new players completed the round. And the first stages, even for experienced players, the first stages in the round were the hardest. So we shared this with the studio. They've flipped the order of stages. They shrunk the lobby area so it's easier to start a round. They cut the round length down to 3 stages. And we, for example, that 32% number, we got it over 65%. OK, one more example here, again from Super Rumble. These are all content that we've developed, so I feel comfortable sharing our metrics here. We looked at weapon balancing. So early on in Super Rumble, my favorite weapon, I guess, of course, was the grenade launcher. And we saw that that was almost like double the amount of kills were coming from grenade launcher as the other weapons. And you might want this in your game, but our studio did not. So they saw this and nerfed the grenade launcher, sadly. But they ended up with a much more balanced game, which is what they were intending to do. OK, like I said, there's tons more that we could go over. We just don't have time to go over all of them today. But I hope that this demonstrates that we're not trying to fight creativity here, right? In all of these places, we're trying to help developers materialize the vision that they have for the game and helping them fine-tune it so that they can give players the experience that they're hoping for. Cool. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brad, who's going to take us even deeper to level 3.
Cool. Thanks, Ben. All right, cool. Let's talk about detecting aha moments in your game. Alex Schultz, the VP of Analytics and CMO of Meta, says that the overall #1 thing we focus on for growth is retention. And magic moments or aha moments are the point when players are engaging with your application or your game where they just get it. Sometimes it can be pretty straightforward. For Facebook, it's friends. But for games, when you have a lot of things going on, it can be hard to know what things are happening in your game that are impactful or important. And I want to talk about a few techniques that you could use to analyze what are the most impactful actions, or what are the aha moments that are leading to retention in your game. So let's start off with the most traditional way I think I've seen people detecting aha moments. You want to look at your precision, recall, and your F1 score of players taking various actions in your world. Precision would be the percent of people who take that action who end up retaining. Recall is the total percent of retained players that end up completing this action. So here in this chart here, we have day 7 retention versus your day 0 time spent. So we're trying to ask the question, what is a good amount of time spent on day 0 that is going to maximize or lead to the biggest impact on a player's ability to retain? And so essentially, the F1 score is, it makes you sound very smart, but it's very difficult to understand. We have to compute the harmonic mean of precision and recall, which is 2 times precision times recall divided by precision plus recall. This metric isn't my favorite for this reason. It's very difficult to interpret and even more difficult to explain to others. But it's more the traditional approach that I've seen to impactful metrics. Take a recall. Everyone starts at 0 minutes. 100% of your retained users start at 0 minutes. That's why it's 100%. As you go down, let's say to 10 minutes in day 0, you're looking at around 60% recall and around 22% precision. Take the harmonic mean of those numbers, and you get your F1 score. We can see in this chart that the time spent threshold that maximizes your F1 score is around 15 minutes. And so this next method, Yoden's J-statistic, is my preferred method for figuring out these metrics because it's a bit easier to interpret, I believe, and it actually leads to different decisions than you would make with an F1 score. And I believe the most important reason you would choose one metric or another is if it leads to different decisions. Okay, so here, we're going to take, with the J-statistic, we're looking for the biggest difference between your retained and your churned users. It's basically a glorified funnel analysis against 2 populations. The first population is your retained users. What do your retained users do on day 0? The second population is your churned users. What do your churned users end up doing on day 0? You compare the difference between those 2 populations, and you get your J-statistic. Technically, it's your sensitivity plus your specificity minus 1, but practically, you're just looking at retained player completion rates minus your churned player completion rates. I really like this metric because it finds a natural balancing point. Things that happen very high up in the funnel, like spending 0 minutes, has no weight. And things that happen very downstream in the funnel, like spending 40 minutes, has a much lower weight as well. And I mentioned at the beginning, J-statistic and F1 score often are correlated, but they make different interpretations, or you can make different decisions on them. And earlier with the F1 score, we were looking at 15 minutes. The J-statistic on the same data would say 7 minutes is actually more impactful. So let's walk through an example. Let's take a game we mentioned before, Bobber Bay Fishing. There's 4 core actions that you take on your first day. You open your fish decks to see what kinds of fish you can catch in the world. You cast your rod to try to attempt to catch a fish. You actually do catch that fish. And then finally, you can cash in that fish for in-game currency. So let's walk through these 4 steps, look at the F1 score and the J-statistic, and help us figure out what's happening in the game and how we might be able to optimize it for the future. And so we have this graph. Let's start at the left here, opening your fish decks. This is the first thing that we prompt you to do when you enter into the world. Players who end up retaining is this blue bar here. Players who end up churning is this red bar. Let's look back and see what they did on day 0 that led to this outcome. 72.7% of your retained users opened their fish decks on the first day, and compare that to 65.9% of your churned users. It's not that big of a difference. I wouldn't say particularly that this action is very impactful because both your retained users and your churned users are doing it at similar rates. But if you look at the F1 score, as it's calculated, 37.4% of your F1 score versus 6.8%. Next, casting rod. 57.6% of your retained players cast their rod on the first day, 44.9% of churned users. Starting to now see some separation when you look at the J-statistic, and 12.9 percentage points difference. However, it's still coming out to a little bit better of an F1 score. There's not too much discrimination between the two. Next, let's look at what percent of people actually caught their first fish, actually caught a fish on day 0. 31.4% for retained players, 15.7% for churned. This is the step that's actually maximizing the J-statistic, indicating that this is the most impactful action of those 4 that people can attain on day 0. However, for the F1 score, it actually comes in a bit lower. The reason for this is that your F1 score actually biases toward recall in a way that's not helpful for downstream engagement. So things that happen high up in the funnel tend to be biased towards an F1 or an F1 score rather than a J-statistic. And finally, let's look at the cash-in step. 13% of your retained users are cashing in versus 4.8% for your churned users. This one was pretty interesting to me because it seems like it's a similar proportional drop-off from fish caught to cash in for both your retained, for both your retained users and your churned users. About 1/3 of people are actually cashing in their fish once they catch it. So that's insight number 1, apart from anything here, is people don't really understand that you can do this action. But it's still really important at an 8.2% J-statistic. So what would I recommend to the team if they were developing this game? I'm actually not sure the open the fish deck step is all that important. It seems like if only 50% of people are really casting their rod on their first day, that seems like a very important action that's maybe there's some friction for people to get there. And I would focus less on opening the fish decks early in the game and maybe save that for a later step. If we were A/B testing this, or if we were developing the game, we might try out a different version of the game where this step is delayed and see if retention for the new version goes up. But more practically, I think we would look at this J-statistic and see what changed. Can we maximize the J-statistic for your fish caught step? Cool. And then Ben, you want to talk about dashboard stuff?
Yeah, I'll just close this out here. Just want to say, again, what we hope to do on Horizon Worlds is give the data that developers need. So this is some of the data that's available. I encourage you to check it out. If you think some key data is missing, we'd love to hear about it. We're working on adding new stuff all the time. Please let us know about that. If you have an analytics background and you're interested in building the future, I'd also love to talk to you about that. And 2 other quick housekeeping things. One, there's a great Gen AI panel that's happening later, hosted by Horizon. A great place to hear how people think about Gen AI and game development. And then also, please give us feedback. You can scan this, let us know, was this a helpful talk or not. There's also, I think, a form going to be emailed to you later. And I think that's it. We're running a bit short on time, so I don't think we'll have time for questions. But we'd love to talk to you. We'll just be right outside the room if you want to chat with us about anything. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.